Okay, today I'm going to be going over 5 examples of science and food that I learned so far this semester from Food Science 101. The first one is called emulsion. Emulsion occurs when two substances are not mutually soluble. This means that these substances cannot dissolve each other. However, they can stay together with small droplets inside of each other's substance. For example, cookie dough is an example of emulsion. It needs agitation, like this whisking process, for these small droplets to get inside the other substance. Because otherwise, everything that goes into cookie dough would not stick together because these are not mutually soluble. They don't dissolve into each other without some sort of agitation. And that's used in a lot of different baking products. The second one is the Maillard reaction. So this is what gives food a crispy brown look. The way it does this is by breaking down proteins and sugars within food, and it uses heat. And it's also called a form of non-enzymatic browning. This means it doesn't require an enzyme to basically speed up this reaction. It's used in all things crispy. This module, we recently learned about how it is used in cookies, for example. It gives them those crispy texture, but it's also used in French fries, like we learned really early on in the class. The third interesting scientific process in food is colloidal foam. Colloidal foam is basically the term for something that is solid, that is air trapped in it, that makes it kind of light and airy. So basically, it's created by dispersing a stabilizer into a liquid. It makes the material like light and fluffy. And the way that this happens is that gas bubbles are surrounded by a liquid. And stabilizers can usually be a protein like butter or fat. But dense wet foams are much thicker. For example, you can compare whipped cream, which is a nice airy foam, compared to ice cream, which is kind of thick and you have to dig into it because it's a wet foam. The fourth scientific activity that I've learned that occurs in food is fermentation. Fermentation is very interesting because it occurs in so many different foods and there's multiple types of it. So fermentation is basically the breaking down of sugars by enzymes of microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. These sugars break down, they change the flavor, texture, and profile of a substance, but this must occur with no oxygen. And there's actually 3 main forms of fermentation. The first one is lactic acid fermentation, and that's common in like dairy products like yogurt. Then there's ethanol/alcohol fermentation. That's common in bread, beer. And then there's acetic acid fermentation, which is fermentation through fruits. And lastly, I want to talk about enzymatic browning. We learned that the Maillard reaction is non-enzymatic browning. So what is enzymatic browning? This is oxidation. This is an oxidation reaction that occurs in fruits and vegetables. It happens when phenolic compounds and oxygen react and they trigger dark pigments to occur. This causes a physical browning. You can see it in this rotten apple, well, not rotten apple, this browning apple in the bottom here. When fruit is cut open or dented and exposed to oxygen, this browning will occur. And usually it's bad because it kind of reduces the nutrients and makes the flavor not desirable. However, this process can be used in a good way for making tea. Enzymatic browning needs to occur in tea leaves to make tea, and it turns it into something that's actually very tasty. So yeah, that is 5 things that I've learned so far this semester about how science and food kind of come together.